Well, funny story. I actually went to DC to try to pass, like just to pass as American, because I couldn't pass for Mexican here and I couldn't pass for white here. So I was like, I don't know. I'm just gonna go over there and I'm gonna try to start over.
Got you.
Maybe
Okay.
they'll take me for something.
Rebrand yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, they don't know me, so I could just start. Like, I could just be whatever I want to be. And then the first day I get there, they're like, "What are you?" And I'm like,
Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Empire, where we like to engage with everybody from pastors to actors, rappers to trappers, and everybody in between. And y'all should know what? We have another great guest for today. But before we get into it, we know or hope you guys should know the deal, which is like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't. We're trying to build up the community. We're doing great work out this. Share. If you guys want to contribute to what we're doing out here, this great work, all contributions go back to the podcast, go back to the community to make everything better for you, for us, and for everybody. If you guys didn't know, I'm the host. My name's Antonio D. Miles. If you didn't know, now you know. But other than that, let's jump right into our amazing guest for the day. Educator, director, organizer, founder, and many more things that we're going to know about this lovely woman today that's with us. And her name is Melissa May. Welcome to The Empire, Melissa.
"Well, thank you for having me."
And how's your day been?
Started off a little rocky with the windy weather. So getting on the freeway was a little bit of a tough drive. We did see one of the trailers flipped over. So a little bit of traffic. So apologies for the delay. But hopefully everybody's okay today. So we did see some first responders and news on the scene.
Gotcha.
Unfortunately.
Well, at least you made it here today safely, right?
Yeah.
Definitely exciting time seeing a trailer flip over, right?
Yeah. My dad was a truck driver, so it brought back some memories of when he was when he would go cross country on the road, and so it kind of made me think a little bit, of the things that I went through as a child, and then thinking about what he went through, trying to provide for our family. So, and then not thinking about all the things that we think about while being in the house, while the people who are out on the streets, doing the things to get our goods from one point in the country to the other side of the country, have to go through and bear through with wind, snow, sleet, rain, hail, things like that. So thinking about their safety.
Yeah, we definitely take for granted the truck drivers that deliver our foods, our services, our goods, all those things. We take advantage of them. And without them, a lot of people would be struggling. So shout out to you drivers that make our life a lot easier in the first world countries, as they say.
Yeah. So, and then just thinking about their pay, thinking about logistics, thinking about all those things. And so what makes the country go around and how much we take for granted and how much we fight for workers' rights. And so that's actually a lot of the work that we do is fighting for workers' rights and a lot of the organizations that I work with.
Gotcha. Shout out to blue collar workers. You guys don't get enough respect, and shout out to you guys. So speaking of which, Ms. May, for people who may not know who you are and what you do, can you please tell all of us who you are and the things that you do?
So that's a great question. Or that's a great way to start, I guess. I guess I can start with, there's so many things that I do, and it goes back to starting with my dream of wanting to be a teacher. So I was an educator over in Washington, D.C., and started off as a science teacher, and then eventually was promoted and training teachers how to teach science and turning underperforming schools around, especially with children who came from different countries, Central American refugees, so kids without any language skills or background in science. A lot of kids that came from war-torn countries, from the Middle East and from Central America. So we weren't just dealing with the impacts of war. We were dealing with a lot of psychological trauma, and we were dealing with trying to teach the children how to come into the classroom and teach them how to integrate into American culture, as well as teach them English language skills and teach them science at the same time. And teach them how to pass a American standardized test at 6th grade level.
Yeah.
Yeah, on top of moving and integrating. So that was...
And learning the language.
And learning the language and learning how to read and write in English and not knowing the language. So teaching them the science content when they had no science content. So training teachers in how to be responsive culturally to all these different cultures, all these different languages within one classroom. So that's actually when diversity and inclusion started. That was long before 2020, 2019, when the conversation happened around George Floyd. And so that's something that I had actually passionately worked on before he had passed away. So that, unfortunately, it took a tragic incident to get that conversation started on a national level. And we were working on that in Washington, D.C. Before, he passed. So that was one of my passion projects. And then we brought that over here, the diversity inclusion,
over to the Inland Empire.
By founding the Ontario Alliance with the League of United Latin American Citizens. So we have one of the directors here, Anthony Noriega, and then also forming that alliance with the NAACP, with our vice president, Ted Burnett here. So we actually all work very closely together. And what we're trying to do is we're now trying to build this intersectionality and show that we're not fighting for the same civil right. We're not fighting for civil rights issues outside or separately outside of each other. We're actually fighting for these issues together. A lot of our issues intersect one another. So we actually come together in a lot of our events and actions. And when we come together, we actually win more of our actions at the city council levels, at the state level, and at the national level. So that's actually been a lot of our work. When we did the districting with Ontario, the city of Ontario, it was all of the civil rights groups that came together, the Latino groups, the African American groups. We had the Pacific Islander group that came as well. I'm a board member for the Pacific Islander group in Ontario, which is called Malo, which in Spanish means bad, but
Malo.
But in the Pacific Islanders actually means thank you. So there's that difference in perspective and culture, and there's all these different things and ways of going about achieving our goals of equality and prosperity and opportunity by working together. So I started off as an educator. Now am the founder and one of the co-founders. These are also the founders right here of the Ontario Alliance. And I'm also an appointee for Governor Newsom to the board of directors for the California Food and Agriculture.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. So I remember we spoke a little bit offline that, there's an incident that happened with a young man named Ryan Garner, right? Or Grainer. And you wanted to speak a little bit about it, right? It's been on your heart.
Yes.
What's been concerning you about the incident?
So, and I don't, when you first look at me, I guess you don't really see that I am Latina, but I am. So my mom's family immigrated here from Mexico.
Got you. I guess the question is, what is Latina, Latino, right? That's and then people need to understand the history of it, which is a mixture of three people, which is the indigenous, Africanos, and the Europeans, right? So then you have a diverse looking type of people.
Yeah. Well, most people thought I was something just by looking at me that I've never actually been. And so it took me taking a DNA test to figure out my history, because our history has been erased. So, for me, I am Latina. I identify as a Mexican American. Chicana. And so my husband is African American, and we met doing a lot of our work in the community at 14 and 17 years old. So our son is
On the East Coast.
here in Ontario.
Okay.
Yeah, and we moved to the East Coast
Okay.
later for work. But for us, the incident that the tragic, death of Ryan really impacted us as a family because, my husband's African American and I am Mexican American and I am mixed race. My dad's family is actually immigrated from England. My mom's family immigrated here from Mexico. So we did have two different dialects happening at the same time. And so for us, my son looks Latino and, he is African American and he is Latino. And we do try to instill that pride in him culturally. And, my husband, I have this conversation all the time. It's like, well, what do we do when our son goes out and he has a meltdown because he also has autism?
Mm-hmm.
And that's my biggest concern. Now, the other interesting thing is that my husband and I actually met working and volunteering for the Ontario Police Department.
Okay.
Yeah. So it gets really interesting and it gets really deep because now we understand how the law enforcement aspect works, but we also understand that our son could, if he were to encounter law enforcement, there is a high probability that he may not survive that encounter.
Yeah.
And we know that. That is a real probability.
Yeah. Even if he wasn't autistic.
Even if he wasn't autistic. Exactly. Because even my husband has been in incidences as somebody who has worked in law enforcement, who has actually been pulled over and racially profiled with him and his cousins for being in a nice car, while he was working at the police department. Yeah.
Ironically.
Well, yeah. And, he has felt, a certain type of way about that. And that's when he opened his eyes to that. And, many of his family and friends have gone through stuff and incidences like that. And there have been friends that we have known and worked with who are African American, who have worked in law enforcement alongside us, who have similar experiences off duty, who have been through these experiences as well. And so, although we have friends who are African American and Latino who work in law enforcement, who have had these experiences outside of the police department, they're in there trying to change the system. They're trying, whether or not they can.
They're putting effort.
They're putting in the effort, but that doesn't always mean that we're able to.
Gotcha. And getting the results.
We can change it. I mean, law enforcement now isn't the way that it was in the 70s or the 60s or the 50s, but it changes little by little the more that we are able to get in there and change the system from within. Yeah. So as long as we're, getting in there are good actors inside and there are bad actors inside. Yeah. So what happened with Ryan, there are people in there that need to be held accountable. And that's something that we do need to talk about because his death could have been prevented. And the people that responded to that call should be held accountable.
Yeah, I agree. So since you're on both sides, you've been on both sides, obviously you're the mother of an autistic son, but you've also worked with the police department. How do you think how can we come up with a solution for this problem from you being able to see both sides?
Well, so I think about this often because I do live with that fear. I live with the fear. There have been times where I think if my son is as tall as I am, right? And he's getting taller every day. He's 14 now. He's going to be going to high school. And I think about, if you can still see when he's going to have a meltdown. We worked with him a lot and he's been able to grow. But there are times where you can see where he's going to emotionally, have an episode. He's not fully developed out of it. And I don't know if he ever will be. I don't think you can be. Autism isn't something that you can just grow out of. It's something that you can cope with if you develop those skills with therapists, if you have the ability to have access to those resources when the kids are really young. So that's one that's one issue, right? Is that the families have to have the training and they have to have access to the therapist when the kids are really young, starting in infancy. But that doesn't always mean that the families have the resources or the ability to even have the therapist in the homes all the time. So the second thing is that if my son were to have a meltdown, do I want to call the police? I don't know if I would. I would just try to handle it on my own.
Well, the whole situation, the question is like, when your son is out and about and the police encounter him, is there a solution that you think that we can make it to a point where both people can go home safely?
So in that situation, if I were not around and I had no control over that, didn't know what was happening, what would make me feel better as a mother, and it's out of my hands, is that we can start to build the infrastructure where instead of immediately sending the police, we need to have some type of triage system. So when that phone call goes in to the dispatch, instead of maybe sending the police, why not send a mental health counselor or a mental health like wellness team? If there's some kind of sign or signature showing that, it's a person who's not dangerous, like they don't have a weapon or they don't have, so based on the description of the person, based on what the person's doing on the phone call that's coming in, the dispatcher should be trained well enough to know that, okay, this might be a person with a mental illness and a mental health crisis. So instead of sending a police officer with the weapon, we need to send a counseling team or a mental health team over there that knows how to de-escalate the situation like they do in the schools. Because the schools have mental health teams that can respond to kids or children with crises, know how to de-escalate those situations. Because as a teacher, I've been in those classrooms, in those situations where we know how to de-escalate children, so that if they're becoming violent, you never hear of a teacher shooting a child.
Yeah.
That's, throwing a chair.
Yeah. They might choke a kid, but that's about it.
Well, yeah, but even then we don't want to do that, right?
Yeah.
But if a child's throwing a chair or they are biting the principal or they're evacuating the classroom and they're throwing everything around, you never hear of that child like really getting hurt, right? Or dying.
When you said biting a principal, I immediately thought about zombies.
Yeah, and that's actually came from my son because he actually did that when he had a meltdown. Yeah, that's a personal experience.
Interesting. It's I'm glad you mentioned this because shout out to Lydia, where she also deals with people with mental issues, but like psychiatric and stuff like that, kind of counsels them. And she said that the Riverside Police Department is working with like counselors and mental health to go as first responders together. So that way when they arrive at a destination, they'll have someone who's a counselor that is trained to kind of help, which I think is a really good answer to this situation that just happened and will continue to happen.
And so, and I know people are going to say, well, you're giving more money to the police. Well, no, not necessarily. You're not necessarily giving more money to the police. And I know that a lot of people feel that that is the problem. But you're allocating those resources, and here's where the problem lies, right? We do give too much money to law enforcement, to the military, in our country, right? We're seeing a lot of this, whereas we should be spending some of those resources and giving it some of those resources and reallocating to education, right? To mental health, to housing, because if you just took like 1% of our military budget, you could actually move it over to education and you would have free lunches or you would have free healthcare, in this whole entire education system, in our district, in our region, and it's like less than 1% actually. I don't know the actual figures, but you could actually look at the Third Reconstruction for the Poor People's Campaign, and you can actually get the numbers of how much, it's such a small, minute amount of money that you would have to take, if you were just to take one fighter jet out of the budget for the U.S., you can actually provide a whole bunch of free meals to everybody within our area, in school, just
From
one
like
fighter jet.
K through 12 type of situation?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just, taking or just reallocating the resources, from this one area, and from the military into our education. And it's not that much of a large or drastic change. It's a
Yeah.
very small, minute change that most people wouldn't even notice.
That percentage-wise that
Yeah.
we're taking from the military.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it really is just prioritizing, students, children, families, mental health, healthcare, here at home, and, versus sending it overseas. That's pretty much what people are really angry about right now.
Gotcha. Why do you think that? Because I'm pretty sure you're not the only one who has this idea before and broken this down. Why do you think the government hasn't implemented such a thing?
So, it comes down to it always comes down to follow the money in campaign finances. Always looking at who is contributing to the campaign finances of the electeds who are currently in office. So, for instance, if you're looking at the current military budget, well, who is currently funding the campaigns for the people who are currently in office right now? Special interests. So anybody who's in office right now who's receiving millions of dollars, and I'll just be out with it, like, look at what's going on with Gaza. You see APAC is funding many of the electeds who are in office right now.
Gotcha. Can you explain who APAC is for people who may not know?
Yes. So it's the American Israeli Political Action. It's a PAC, basically. And so Israel basically comes in and says, here, we'll fund your campaign, we'll fund your campaign, we'll fund your campaign. And they fund actually Republicans and Democrats. So
Both sides of the aisle.
both sides of the
Okay.
aisle. Yeah.
Smart.
Yeah. And so they infiltrate our country by saying, we give you, $92,000. You're going to vote the way that we want you to vote, and you're going to send this amount of military aid and resources to our country, Israel. And then you're going to vote this way for us, and in return, we'll donate this money to your campaign as a result.
I love it. Awesome. Business in the end of the day. And
So when candidates like myself who go to run against them, who don't have, that money in our bank accounts to send out all these mailers and to get the word out that we're running or what we stand for, they keep getting reelected. So because we can't outspend them, if you're doing a people-powered campaign, especially in our region where we have
very low income,
where we mostly have warehouses and that are with people making $32,000 a year, and those are mostly the jobs here. Our people cannot afford to pay $24,000 a year for one bedroom in rent if they have a family. So how are they going to afford to do anything else besides survive with the utilities plus rent plus a car payment plus food, plus clothes for their children?
Yeah.
Like, where do you get the rest of the money?
And, plus streaming Netflix, it's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
I mean, if it were me donating $5 to a political campaign or doing $5 for Netflix, I'm going to choose Netflix because I worked hard. So I deserve Netflix,
I want to binge watch my show.
Yeah, because what else do you do when you're struggling? So, that's what we have. That's pretty much. And what else do we have here in the Inland Empire? Let's be honest. Like when they're building warehouses over Scandia, you don't really have much else.
Yeah. I think that people are thinking like, okay, Netflix is like my only getaway, right? And speaking about campaign, maybe some people may know, some people may not know, but you were running, right? May for Congress, right? Can you please explain to us the role and the responsibilities that you were running for?
Yes, so I was running for the 35th district for the congressional seat, which is covers Ontario, parts of Rancho, Upland, Montclair, Pomona, Chino, and Fontana. So within that area, it would have been a seat that was it is a federal seat. And basically what it is you go to Washington, D.C., you are looking to get the federal resources and really look at using those federal resources to spend that money and bring it back home. You're also dealing with international issues, as for instance, dealing with the Israel and Gaza war. So you're looking at what types of votes or how you're going to vote when it comes to those issues, especially if you're going to be sending or funding that type of military endeavors, or sending any more money over there to fund the military campaign over there. So a very important seat, especially when it comes to Congress and those international issues and things like that.
Gotcha. And it would have been a House of Representatives seat?
House of Representatives.
Okay, awesome. And so, unfortunately, I think you mentioned to me that didn't make the primary, right?
No, so unfortunately, March 5th was the primary. So we did run, I would say we ran a pretty solid campaign. We were always busy every single weekend. We were out there we were out there doing meet and greets 3-4 times a week. We were out in every city. There were actually 8 cities within the district. And what ended up happening is we were reaching out to the community in various methods. Of course, we didn't have the money to actually send the mailers because that's the most expensive method to do that. Mm-hmm. It pretty much costs like 68 cents to send a mailer, and you need to send about almost over 100,000 mailers to be able to reach the amount of people that you would need to get the votes to come in.
Is that like next to like doing like paid advertisement on TV or something like that?
Yeah,
as far as pricing?
And then paid advertisements would also be another, the next best way to reach people. However, nowadays you have text messaging, you have social media, you have emails. So there's other ways to reach out to people. You have canvassing, you have phone banking. But if you don't have the money to actually send out the mailers, that's where you come into this, discrepancy with trying to run a campaign against an incumbent who's already been there. So
yeah,
in other states, they do have campaign finance reform laws where you are able to, if you raise so much money, then the state or that locale, like I believe it's in Oregon, they will actually match you. So they actually try to balance it out and try to make it a fair
fight, basically.
Fair fight.
That's kind of cool, actually, as opposed to like, hey, whoever has the most money is going to win.
Pretty much.
As opposed to whoever has the best policy and making it like a fair chance.
So there are states that actually will try to level out the playing field when it comes to campaign finances. California is not one of them. So we just don't do that.
Gotcha.
Hopefully one day we will be.
Maybe.
If we can get enough of people with that vision elected, if we can motivate enough of our community to get out to vote and understand the importance of voting. We did have the other problem was we had a very low voter turnout this March. People were just very discouraged. They felt like their vote didn't count and it didn't matter, even though it was very accessible because the ballots were mailed.
Mm-hmm. That's the strange thing about it.
Well, I think people, they got it and then they tossed it away. Like it was kind of like another piece
Trash.
of junk mail.
Yeah.
It wasn't valued.
Yeah.
And so to me, somebody who is a civil rights activist who is very, very deeply committed and involved in these fights, because my family on my mom's side, we, my grandfather worked in the fields. He worked as a farm worker. Mm-hmm. And so, what got me involved in these civil rights fights, especially against the warehouses, was when I came back home from DC and I saw all these warehouses being built over all of our agricultural land. And the last of our Latino culture was erased when I saw the Sun-Kissed factory in Ontario completely demolished and a warehouse was built over it, and the only thing was standing was the Sun-Kissed tower.
And that's it. Yeah.
And the last of our Latino history was completely wiped out. So for me, I just felt like, wow, we were already not acknowledged as a group of people, and they just completely demolished the last piece of us.
It's like an American tradition.
Yeah. And I was like, so not only are they sending us to the warehouses to exploit us
Yeah.
and make a profit off of us.
Yeah.
I mean, billions of dollars, like record history, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's a new system of exploitation with a new group of people. So the system has never ended, you know, in a new location, new geography.
Some people say it's like the new plantation.
It is a new plantation. It is. It really is. If you really look at the wages and the amount of the stories, if you hear the stories of the people in the warehouses and how if you go in at 18, you come out at 21 permanently disabled because your shoulders on both sides and your knees on both sides are completely destroyed. The kids can't work anymore.
Yeah.
There's no chance for you to be able to make an income anymore.
Yeah.
Because they have destroyed your body.
Yeah. I will give Amazon the credit that they do some college things. They do give people opportunities to move up, but that's up to the individual. They used to give stock at one point, which was really cool, but not anymore.
No, not anymore.
Yeah. I wanted to address, because I was talking to a friend about the low toner outcome for voting. And the thing was that he was saying that a majority of the population is younger people. And so younger people are not voting.
Yeah.
And so we're not getting to the youth.
So here's where
So you would agree?
I definitely agree. And
Okay.
I'll tell you why, because we had the statistics and during the campaign, we had all the statistics. The group that came out to vote were the highest group were the 65 and older white.
Okay. Male and female?
Yeah, male and female. The second group that came out to vote in the highest numbers were the 50 to 65-year-old white.
Okay.
The next group wasn't any group after that. It was like slightly Latino, but not much.
Yeah, not enough to make a record.
Not enough to make a dent in anything.
Gotcha.
So and this was throughout the whole county of San Bernardino and throughout the state of California. It was like a record low turnout. So when you're looking at this, there's 2 or 3 different points to really consider here. The first point being, when you're looking at the first point is that there's only one group in demographic really voting. So you have to think about that in terms of if it's only one group that's turning out to vote, it's only one voice that's being heard.
Yeah.
And think about how old that group is and what time period that group came from.
50 plus.
50 plus.
Yeah.
And when did they grow up?
Mm-hmm. These are boomers, at least. Mm-hmm.
So the boomers want what they want when they want it. And what era did they really grow up in?
We're going to say at least the 60s.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So they grew up during the 50s, the 60s, definitely the 60s. So late 50s, 60s, 70s. So you're talking about an era where civil rights, social justice, all of those major social justice issues that we are fighting for now were not priorities then.
Yeah.
So everything that we were fighting for then, those are things that are being voted on right now.
Yeah. It's like a full circle.
Yeah.
Like it never even happened.
Exactly.
Like it never happened.
So we're out there protesting, we're out there yelling, we're out there saying, hey, wake up, hey, listen to us. But then when it comes time for us to really make that our voices count and matter, it's at the ballot box, and then we don't show up.
Yeah. That connects me to my next question is that, so in retrospect, what do you think are some of the tactics that you did that didn't turn out as favorable as you were hoping to?
I think we didn't realize that we needed to reach out to the older demographics, and we needed to really, we thought that if we turned out our demographics, our younger voters, our, BIPOC communities, if we really educated our communities and we, engaged them and told them what we were fighting for, we thought that they would show up.
That they would support and get up off their ass.
And they did. They didn't come.
Yeah.
No one showed up.
Yep.
So I think for me, that felt really disappointing because I felt abandoned.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like, wow, here we are voicing everything. We're putting our careers on the line. We're putting our families out there on the line. We're sacrificing our time and energy, with our families, with our friends. We're sacrificing our reputations. And when the time came, no one showed up.
It's like left alone in the barren desert, left alone in the ocean to float. Like I was saying, I talked to the gentleman about it, and we were saying that it's youth, right? And I was saying, something as simple as someone like a Beyonce, a young rapper, influencer, all they say, go and vote. Guaranteed the numbers would have changed.
Yeah, the numbers would have changed, but what people don't realize is that people are quick to criticize the people who are running for office, saying, oh, you're this, oh, you're just another, person that we can't trust. Oh, you're just another, part of the system, right? And we can't trust you. But actually, it's very difficult to run, to even get a person to run. Like, trust me, I've tried to get people to run. I have tried. Like, we have all tried.
To get somebody else to run.
Get somebody else to run.
Got you.
I wouldn't have ran if it was up to me. Like, I tried to get other people to run, right?
So did you run because you felt like, what is the old saying? Like, if you want something done right, you got to do it yourself?
Yeah, because I have supported many candidates. I worked on many campaigns, and I supported many candidates that did let me down. And I was like, why am I working so hard for this person if they're just going to do the complete opposite? So I understand how people are feeling disillusioned and, not motivated to show up because, people are promising things and then not delivering, or because people are, wanting, one thing and saying another. I get that. I understand that. But there are people out there who do have integrity, that do stand for something, that do have values and morals, and that are out there doing the work in the community.
Yep.
There are people. And just because there are bad players, bad actors out there, it doesn't mean that we're all bad actors.
Yeah. It's crazy how the evil always overshadows the good.
Yeah, because there are more of us out there who are doing good work out there every single day and putting our reputations on the line, our families, our jobs, because we face retaliation all the time. Like, we face all sorts of stuff all the time that people don't know about. Like, with the corruption and the systems that these politicians own and run. Like, my husband and I own a nonprofit, and we try to get things done all the time. And then when some of these people who, that we oppose find out what we're doing, they shut us down all the time using their power. So just because we're trying to help people, because like when the Ontario explosion happened, people lost their homes and they were put into hotels for 2 weeks and by the Red Cross. And when the city of Ontario had to take over the aid, the Red Cross called me because they knew I had my nonprofit, even though we were not a relief nonprofit. And they were like, we're trying to get a hold of the city and they're not calling us back. They keep dropping the line. They keep hanging up on us. If we don't get a hold of somebody to help these families, they're all going to be in their cars with their children.
Got you. Homeless, houseless.
Homeless. And it's not their fault
Yeah.
that this house exploded and these families were calling the city and they did absolutely nothing.
Got you. Can you explain about the Ontario explosion for people who may not know what that is or what that was?
So the Ontario explosion happened like 3 years ago.
So recent.
Yeah.
Okay.
So like 3 years ago, like probably 2020 during COVID. And so, yeah, so that actually happened. And what ended up happening was there was this loud explosion in the south end of Ontario. And it's on the news and you can find it if you look it up. And what happened was the house had exploded because there was a whole bunch of ammunition and fireworks that were not supposed to be there, and it filled the entire backyard of this house in a residential area. So the neighbors had called multiple times to the police and to code enforcement, reporting that there was this, activity that was going on, and that that they were manufacturing these illegal explosives that these people were really dangerous. And so they had all of these different reports going on. So eventually a year or two go by and this house explodes. And 80 homes are affected. And maybe about 14 homes around that home are completely blown out from the explosion.
Wow, 14 homes.
14 homes.
Wow, it's a huge explosion.
So it's huge explosion. Yeah, you can see, you could see from all the way from Ontario to Rancho Cucamonga to Anaheim, the explosion, the cloud.
Okay, wow.
It was huge.
Wow.
And it rocked the foundations of the homes. Like the 80 homes had all suffered damage, like major damage, structural damage.
Yeah.
So homes were red tagged. Homes were still being fixed like about a year or two later. And the 14 homes around were completely wiped out. Like the windows were blown out. They were rocked off their foundations. Like everything was completely gone. Like everything. Just blackened. Like it looked like a bomb was dropped on.
Yeah, basically in Ontario.
In Ontario. So the cars were completely wiped out. Like there was nothing left of the cars except for a shell. The homes, there was nothing left except for a shell. So those families actually ended up in hotels for 2 weeks. The Red Cross helped them for 2 weeks. And what ended up happening was they tried to have the city take over those relief efforts in the hotels. And then when the city didn't respond, the families actually ended up having to check out and were in their cars. And so I ended up going onto social media and explaining the situation to the community. And so I had the community actually go to the hotels to actually start paying for the hotels.
Okay.
Out of their own pockets and to meet the families.
Beautiful.
And so that's how the community came together. And that's actually where a lot of my community work came in after. That's when we moved back from DC.
Okay. And taking care of business. I love that. Thank you for your work.
Yeah,
I gotta say that. So Melissa, you've been a part of, the agriculture, LULAC, so many different things and organizations, foundations, and an educator. This was your first time running as an elected official, correct?
No, I actually ran for school board.
Or I guess government official.
I ran for school board 2 years ago and I won that election. I did win that election. But unfortunately, my dad had passed away and then my mom almost lost her house during that election and I won the election. And then we actually ended up having to move the month that I won the election.
Okay.
To save my mom's house from going into foreclosure. So I actually had to resign from that school board seat.
Well, you did the righteous thing, as we say.
Yeah. So it was probably, not only did I lose my dad, but I also resigned a school board seat after winning it. And then we moved from our home and, it was a really tough year.
Yeah. Well, they say when one door closes, another one opens.
Yeah.
Right? That's the way to look at it. The reason why I asked is because, but I guess as a government official, this is the first time, right, running for Congress?
Yeah.
So what advice would you give somebody who wanted to run who wanted to run for a government official position or start their own organization to help the community or in general? What advice would you give people?
Oh, okay. So if you're going to start your own nonprofit, there's a couple of ways that you can do that. The best way to do it, some people will try to do it on their own. I don't recommend that because you might check a box that could be the wrong box and then you get yourself into some tax problems.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Don't want the government after you.
yeah. And it can cause all sorts of IRS issues. So the best way, the easiest way to do it is save up $500 to $1,000, especially like after tax time. That's the best way to do it. That's actually how my husband and I did it. Was after tax time, we decided, hey, we have some extra money. So what are we going to do with this? And we said, okay, well, let's invest it back into the community and maybe we can do something eventually with it. And we went to Swift filings, or you could do LegalZoom. It doesn't matter. It's an online legal program. And you can actually file your nonprofit through these programs, depending. Swift is just like $100 cheaper than LegalZoom. But you actually do it all online, and it's a legal way to do it. And you can incorporate that way.
Love it.
And it's only $400 to $500. So, and it takes care of everything for you. And within 4 to 6 months, you can start your own nonprofit.
Kind of easy, actually.
Yeah, it's very easy.
Check your box on that one, guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and it will walk you through everything. You don't have to worry about anything. It will do a step-by-step process. And then you might have to make like 1 or 2 phone calls to the Secretary of State's office to get your seal and to maybe get your EIN number. But once you do those 2 things outside of the LegalZoom, you're fine. And you pay the fees. You're well on your way to starting that. Then the next thing you want to do is you want to start networking. You want to start going out and finding out like how to, raise money, how to get grants, things like that. Because the hardest part of running a nonprofit is always finding the money, right?
Yeah. Where's the money?
Yeah. So, or if you can find a co-working space, co-op space, kind of like the Garcia Center, that would be perfect. And there's not really enough spaces like this. So one of the reasons why I ran for office was actually to bring federal funds so that we could start more spaces like this. So that was actually the dream, was to actually go and run for office to bring the federal money to the nonprofits to actually provide them the money to do that community work. So that's one less thing off of their plates. So unfortunately, it didn't happen this time, but who knows when it will happen. If it does happen, then that's when we will actually be able to, work with the nonprofits to help them get that funding and help them through that process so that they can do that community work.
Oh, beautiful. Beautiful. I like the vision too, right? Is there anything else? I feel like you wanted to share some other stuff. Was there something else that you wanted to share with us?
So I think with running for office, the other thing is that if you're looking to run for office, there is this organization called Run for Something. Always start there. You can go online and look that up, and
It's
they'll
literally
get you
called
started.
Run for Something? Okay,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, and there's also women-led organizations. I forgot what the women-led ones. So me being a first and second generation, what they call new Americans, first generation, second generation born in the States. It's called New American Leaders, and you can go to New American Leaders and you can actually sign up for their programs on how to run for office. And it's
Cool.
Yeah, it's very affordable trainings all the time. So they'll teach you on how to run for office, and it's a very thorough program. If you don't want to run for office, then they'll teach you on how to work on campaigns.
Okay, beautiful. Melissa, what's something that most people don't know about you, maybe even some close people? What's something that they don't know about you? It could be anything.
I think something that people don't know about me is I would say that I love art history, and I love to paint. So during COVID, a way for me to de-stress was I would just paint 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day and learn a new drawing skill, a new painting skill. And whenever I would feel anxious or have some sort of anxiety because of the lockdowns, I would really just get into painting to really help ease and calm that anxiety. And then the other thing is that the reason why my husband and I wanted to build the Art and Science Cultural Center, a children's science museum, is because with my son having autism, is science was the way that we connected with my son. And doing the science experiments, the lab kits at home, was the way that we helped my son develop those social skills and that one-on-one time for him to really pay attention to us.
Gotcha.
And so a lot of times kids with autism can't really make the eye contact.
Yeah.
And so, or they have a hard time sitting down for more than a couple seconds or not stemming. So it was science that helped me connect to my son.
Even closer. Ironically, probably never saw that coming, huh?
Yeah. And so it was just one of those things where it's like, so the dream is to build a science museum for the community, not just to teach science and help the teachers or the students connect to science, but it really is about bringing that love for my son to the community and also to help other families for children with special needs, to help them develop those bonds with their children.
I love that. Ooh, and speaking of projects and dream projects, what current projects are you working on, whether in any aspect, in any facet, what current projects are you working on?
So right now I'm just taking a break.
Okay. It's break time. Okay.
Yeah.
I like it.
We ran a couple different campaigns and, it was a lot. So this month, we're actually going to go to Palm Springs this weekend and we are going to relax.
Got you a bottle of wine, maybe some paint.
Yeah, with some paint.
Paint and sip, as they say.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then we're helping the Ontario veterans, the VFW in Ontario, because they recently suffered a break-in. And so after Palm Springs from this weekend, after the decompression, we're helping them raise money. So LULAC veterans gave $250. Shell Roofing gave $500 to help them. $10,000 was stolen. We're going to have community cleanups to help them clean up. Vince's Spaghetti also helped do a fundraiser with the spaghetti dinner.
Okay.
We're going to have like a chili cook-off or a barbecue over at the VFW, and that's going to be headed by the NAACP. With Ted over here. So we're all getting together and we're doing all these different things for the VFW right now to make sure that they recover. So that's going to be the next project that we're working on.
Okay.
So,
but until then, this is the calm after the storm, to relax, calm down, come back stronger for the fight.
Yeah. And right now I just have, community members reaching out, wanting me to keep going and keep pursuing the path that we're already on. So they don't want me to stop what we're doing. So keep running, keep going, keep running for office. So whatever that may look like, we don't know yet. But people see the vision now of what we're trying to do is that we're trying to run for these, state or federal offices now in order to bring those resources, that money from the state and the federal level back to the community.
Yeah.
And really keep it back and at home and invest it at home and just invest and rebuild here. There's this thing called from the Poor People's Campaign, and Ted is one of the major, actually he has a pamphlet. You have the pamphlet. So Ted wants to talk about the Poor People's Campaign. He has some facts on there.
We'll put the link in the description so people can find it.
Okay. And So basically, there's a third Reconstruction from the Poor People's Campaign.
Talking to the microphone, please.
And it really is about just bringing back those resources from the state and the federal level and reinvesting all those resources back into our community.
Beautiful. And I think the best part is that the people believe in you and they want you to keep coming back. And so in order for you to do your job efficiently and correctly is that you need to have some me time.
Yeah.
To come back stronger and better, not only for yourself, but for the people that believe in you. Right?
Well, and I guess that's the other thing is I think if we go one step further from the third Reconstruction, going back to the 1800s, 1600s, 1700s, right, when we're going back to that American history and completing the projects that were started back then from the Civil War, right, the 1800s, and going back into that vision and bringing it into the future, things that were never completely finished, going back into the New Deal, right? Those are things that we never finished. So now we're going to bring all of that back.
Okay. To get it corrected.
To just complete it and to ensure that it's stronger, that it's better.
Okay.
You know, I don't consider myself a progressive or a liberal. I consider myself a New Deal Democrat, something that most people have never thought about, because what FDR did was he brought in Social Security, but he also brought in the Works Progress Administration. He brought in the Civilian Conservation Corps. He put all the people back to work using federal funds.
Okay. Is that a good thing or a bad thing in your mind?
No, it's great.
Okay.
Because we're missing those federal dollars because we're sending it all overseas and we're not bringing it back home to create those jobs.
Got you. We're basically giving money away to other people instead of to the American people. Okay. Wow. So Melissa May, I want to thank you so much. You know, when I think of the name May, I think of someone of Asian descent. And I'm pretty sure that's probably probably a lot of people probably thought you were, right? When you said that people would ask you things, right? They would start to say something like that, right?
Yeah.
Is May your middle name or is it your last name?
No, it's my husband's last name.
So what's your maiden last name?
My maiden, my mother's is Nevares. My dad's is Gardner, so there's that. And then my husband is May, and his has an interesting story. Through Ancestry.com, we did find out that his name is from a plantation in Tennessee.
Okay.
It is a name from the slave owners that was given to his family when they were free.
Which makes sense, you know. Typically, most Afro-Americans, I guess, all of us, even Latinos, Latinos were anybody that's living in this country most likely got their names from Europeans if they haven't been immigrated within like the last recently, right?
Well, I always wanted to give my husband the gift of his history since he never knew where he was from. And so we did the DNA test, and, you know, we could trace back to, you know, the country, the African origins, but we can only trace so far. We couldn't really find the records as to where his family came from. But it's the same for Latinos. Like, we don't know either. Like, I didn't know that, you know, I had a seventh great grandparent who was 100% African from Africa. Like, we never knew until we did the DNA test. I didn't know I was Native American. That's why I look the way I look. I had no idea. Like, I thought there was some other family secret.
Yeah. Okay. Milkman. Mom and the milkman.
I honestly thought like my dad was not my real dad. I did the DNA test because I thought I was, you know, the
like,
milkman.
Milkman's like, Mama, like, where'd you find this guy, Mr. Gardner, from?
Exactly.
Was he your boss? Who was this guy?
And then it turns out I was actually British, and then I was actually Native American. And then I was like, oh, I'm Native American, not Asian, like 0% Asian, 21% Native American. Like, I get it now. So
interesting. You know what's interesting also is that they said that it's actually been, and you guys can double check this, there's been like a lot of falsification on those like Ancestor.com and, you know, the 23andMe. There's been a lot of like falsification in those things. And I can't speak on it because I don't know too much about it. I just heard about it, which I thought was very interesting. And I also want to talk about the African ancestry in Mexico,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So I was actually at this lecture recently, and it said that, there's been African ancestry within Mexico, and she mostly started from basically from slavery times, right, 1600s. And she said Africans have been in Mexico ever since then. There's been a railroad that went south, and long story short, she talks about the president in Mexico at the time. The president in Mexico at the time was saying, whether you're indigenous or African, you guys are all Mexican. You're all Mexican. And it's only in recent times where they decided to start saying, okay, you're only Mexican if you're light-skinned. And then other than that, you're Afro-Mexican or you're something else, right?
Yeah.
And so that's when the separation started happening. But I thought it was a really interesting lecture. I just kind of wanted to tag onto that.
Well, we, going back to the history of Mexico, we didn't know that, in working with the civil rights organizations, I didn't know my own history, especially when I even knowing that I was Native American. I had no clue. I never claimed it out of respect because I never, I
Could
knew
relate.
I knew I was Mexican American, but I never, said, oh yeah, I'm indigenous too. I mean, we were always just claimed Chicano and Mexican American. That was it, right? So, and then I found that other piece out, and I was like, oh, wow, that makes so much sense. That must explain why I was always drawn to the Southwest, and I was actually from there. The DNA was from there. And I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. I had all these Kachina dolls. I didn't know why. I didn't know why I was drawn to all these things my whole entire life as a kid. So it just seemed like it was a core part of my DNA. And then something happened, and we learned about the Underground Railroad, and we had taken my son when we lived in Maryland and DC. We had taken our son to the Underground Railroad on the Harriet Tubman Trail, on the Quaker house over there in Maryland, one day, and it was really a spiritual experience, and I recommend that everyone do it, no matter who you are. If you're American, you should definitely go on that trail.
Yeah, experience it.
Yeah, because you're walking through the forest, and you're going through it talks about the stories, and you're walking through it as if you're hearing what the ancestors had heard at that time.
Yeah.
It's really powerful. It's really emotional. And
they're walking this at night, being chased by dogs. Yeah.
It's an unreal experience because there's nothing else out there. You just hear the sound of your footsteps, and you can almost feel like you're connecting.
Okay.
With the spirits and the history of it.
Okay.
Yeah. And so for us to take our son there when he was about 7 or 8 on the Underground Railroad Trail, and you're reading the history, and you're being taken by a guide who's actually walking you through this, then we started to learn more about the Underground Railroad, the Southern Underground Railroad to Mexico. And I didn't know about that. So we learned about that first. And then we did the Ancestry and the 23andMe. And then all of a sudden I realized, wait a minute, I have an African ancestor. So during the 1800s, when the Underground Railroad was there, and I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, how is that possible? How do I not know any of this? How am I so disconnected from my own,
history?
I know nothing. I absolutely had no idea of any of this.
Gotcha. And is it accidental or is it on purpose?
I mean, I've always felt this connection for civil rights and for these different passions and these different cultures, but I never knew why. So it was just learning about all these different bits and pieces, over time. And it started to all come together and make sense as to, understanding the puzzle of, my ancestry and my life. And, it's hard to tell because it's like, people see me and they're like, oh, you're Asian. And I'm like, well, no.
Yeah. Phenotypes. Yep.
Yeah. And I'm like, no, sometimes people say, oh, you're Native American. I'm like, well,
I'll take that. Yeah.
and I'm like, well, Mexican American, but I guess I don't know. I don't even know anymore.
Got you.
Yeah.
I'm me. I'm just me.
Yeah. And so in DC, I just try to be anything. And they're like, oh, you're exotic. Like, what country are you from? And I'm like,
got you.
I'm like, okay, so I'm not American either.
Yeah. I'm from Israel.
Yeah. I'm like, I'm just an immigrant. I don't know.
Yeah. I'm an alien. I came from the sky. I'm here now. I'm observing you people. You guys got it all wrong.
Well, funny story. I actually went to DC to try to pass, like just to pass as American, because I couldn't pass for Mexican here and I couldn't pass for white here. So I was like, I don't know. I'm just gonna go over there and I'm gonna try to start over.
Got you. Okay.
Maybe they'll take me for something.
Rebrand yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was like, they don't know me, so I could just start. Like I could just be whatever I want to be. And then the first day I get there, they're like, what are you? And I'm like, like, what?
Well, you had a blank slate. You could have said anything.
Yeah, and I looked at them and I was like, well, what do you think I am? They're like, well, what country are you from? And I'm like, from America? And they're like, no, where are you from? And I'm like, California? And they're like, no, where are you?
Where are your parents from?
Well, no, I tried. And they're like, no, where are you from? I'm like, Los Angeles. They're like, no, what are you? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, what do you want from me? I'm American.
Yeah. Leave me alone.
I was like, I can't get away with anything here.
Yeah. I guess it's a blessing and a curse, how you want to look at it. Let's look at it as a blessing because you're different.
Yes, I can be anything I want.
Yeah, it's a blessing because like this way you can't be put into a box.
Yeah.
This way you can be like, I'm Melissa.
Yeah.
May.
You take me and I can be whatever you want me to be.
Yeah, Melissa, I want to thank you so much for being on The Empire. Can you please, let's say this, 100 years pass by, 250 years pass by, half a millennia passes by. What would you like your empire to look like, whether in education, family, community, organization? What would you like your empire to look like half a millennia from today?
Oh, that's a great question. I envision it being filled with clean air, clean water, free healthcare, the best education systems, and our people being very diverse and getting along, the best technology, this green technology, right? Where we're not using fossil fuels, we're just using, clean magnetic energy, like the most advanced, sophisticated technology, like what they have in Japan or something, that you could visualize. And then I just envision people like doing things that make them happy, fulfilled. Like they're not working these warehouse jobs. They're doing something that actually doesn't make them feel like they're in a rat race. They're actually doing something that gives them that time to spend with their families, and gives them those enriching experiences where they get to go and have access to these museums, to art, to science, like what I had in DC.
I love that.
Life, just enjoy life. And be filled with purpose and meaning. And have like the basics where we don't have to fight for it. It's just there.
I like that. That's a good way to live. It's like basic needs that we all should already have.
Yeah.
Water, housing, and food. And
our people just get along and everybody enjoys each other because we all have our needs met.
Got you. Starting to get to utopian right there at that point.
Yeah, we're all just rooted in community because we're not fighting each other for the resources.
Because there's enough resources. Got you. I like that. Melissa, thank you so much for being on The Empire. Can you please tell everybody how they can find you, reach you, support you, all those things? Can you please let everybody know?
Oh, yeah. So you can go to www.melissamayforcongress.com Our website is still up and running. It will be up and running. So even though the election, the primary is over, the website is still going. So we haven't stopped yet and we won't quit yet. So look out for us for the next 2 years. And you can still go on there and support.
Nice. And any social medias?
So we are on Instagram with the same handle at Melissa May for Congress, I believe 2024, and then Facebook as well, and then the same with the email, I believe.
Cool. And I'll have all those things and the links in the description, the website, and for sure the Instagram. And I want to thank Melissa for being on. I want to thank all you guys for watching. I think we learned a lot. We learned that, we talked a lot about the Garner situation and what was going on. We learned that she went to D.C. trying to start a new identity, and they didn't happen. And that, it was a really cool, interesting thing that we learned about how there's a cap in certain states for when running, which I think is super cool to kind of make an even playing field. And it's just super cool things I think we learned today. And again, I want to thank her. I want to thank all you guys. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't. We're trying to build it up, so please do that. Like the video, share if you enjoyed. Comment down below what you thought. If you want to contribute, you can do our Cash App, which is $THEE Empire Podcast. We also have Venmo and PayPal in the description, which will all be contributions that'll help go to the podcast and to the community. My name's Antonio D. Miles. And other than that, we'll catch you guys in the next episode. All right? Peace. I say it's my duty. Yeah. Is it my will? Yeah. To do what? Yeah. To do is right. I say.
Thank you. That was a great interview.
Thank you. Not too bad, right?
No, it's actually
Good put the foot.
enjoyable.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good to hear.
I liked it.